Flying fingers, it's a big issue when it comes to beginner bass players. And in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to solve that. Now, the first one is really to keep your hand position in check. I want you to take out your hand like this, wiggle your fingers around and sort of make a curved arc shape in a way, not too curved, not like you're really clawing for something, but just a gentle curve arc. You can sort of see what I'm doing there, but have your thumb out flat, put your thumb on the back of the neck and just move your fingers in, and where they naturally rest is a good position for your fingers to be, as flying fingers can often be caused by closed hand positions where you try and open it up. Keep your wrist pretty straight as well. You don't want it to be out up here, and you don't want it to be all the way back up there, and you don't want too much tension on the strings either. Just hold it lightly and hold it spread, not so it feels like you're really stressing out your hand like this, but just so your hand feels nice and comfortable on the instrument. Now for my hands, I can quite comfortably go from 1st fret to 3rd fret with my 1st to my pinky, and I think you should be able to too as well. And then, you know, I can do 4 frets from the 3rd fret to the 6th fret there, but that's besides the point. You want about a 3 fret span or 2 extra fret, 1 to 3 from F to G on your E string. If you can comfortably hold your hand like that, you're off to a great start. These 2 middle fingers can just be in whatever position they need to be for there. So now you've got your hand position like this, you're already step 1. Now step 2, I sort of already mentioned, and it's don't press too hard. Don't feel you have the need to press too hard. Try and find the perfect spot where you don't have to press too hard, but you also aren't pressing so lightly that you aren't getting a note out. You'll find at the start you'll get a bit of a ghost note, and then you might get a harmonic, then you get some buzz, and then you'll get a full clean note. And find where that full clean note starts as well, because that is the tightness, essentially, the pressure you should be putting on, because a lot of beginners put loads of pressure and you sort of feel like you have to because your fingers are hurting, and these big beefy strings, and they're all just a pain to get round, and your fingers are hurting from it and things like that. I get that, but put less pressure on, because it will save your fingers a little bit more as well. Don't feel like you really have to dig in, because that often doesn't help with these flying fingers. You want a relaxed hand position. You don't want one that's all tensed up, because those fingers are going to fly a little bit more. Then another great thing in at number 3 is just having your fingers like close to the fretboard. I know it sounds obvious, but go through just a line or a scale or something, and don't do anything with this hand. Just move your fingers on. In this case, I'm doing a C major scale here, just with my hand. I know you can't hear it because I haven't got my bass plugged in, but I'm just fingering over the notes and trying to keep my fingers as close to the fingerboard as possible, and really trying to put the least amount of effort in. And then you can add that hand in and get all the tone as well, and then get the right pressure that you need. But essentially, just to start, just finger over a particular scale or a particular line or a particular tune. Do nothing with this hand, and just really try and get your fingers to move as little above the fingerboard as possible. You basically just want them all on the fingerboard at all times, really, and then you can gauge from that, you know, what do I need to work on? And you can train your fingers like this just by doing different things and keeping your fingers really flat on the fingerboard and not just wiggling and waggling all over the place. Then at tip number 4, it's quite a useful one, and it's knowing where you can keep your fingers down, because often if we're going from a C to a D, you'll see beginners sort of flick their fingers round and they'll flick this finger up, if you can see that there, which you don't need to. You can just play a D and leave that finger down. If you're playing a note that's further this way, so towards your end of the neck on this hand, towards all the higher stuff, you don't need to lift these fingers up. You know, you can just play like this, and you don't need to lift your fingers up. Now if you're going down, you do have to lift that finger up. If I was going from a D to a C, I've got to lift that finger up. But if I'm going C to D, you can see, look, this finger is not lifting off the fingerboard. It's staying right there. And learning where you can keep your fingers down to play as efficiently as possible is a thing which, you know, once you know it, will seem like, oh, that's just totally obvious. But for people that don't know it and haven't motorized that in themselves, it's good to know where you can keep fingers down. And, you know, you can always experiment with this. It's like, oh, can I keep my finger down there? Now, if you're changing strings, you wouldn't really keep your finger down, but you can have it over the string, but not touching it as well. And that's another great strategy for changing strings. But you know, I can play all of these notes here and I don't have to lift this finger at all. Perhaps for 6th fret, I'd take it off a little bit, but you know, learning where to keep your fingers down on the fretboard is a great solution. So let's get in to the last one. So I find this tip to be really effective as well for dealing with flying fingers, as now you know you've got those exercises and you know you can sort of really try and deal with your flying fingers in that sense, you know, not to put too much pressure on and not keep yourself too tight, and you're trying to keep your fingers as close to the fingerboard as possible. And the next thing, which I again sort of touched upon in the last point, I've sort of doubled them up in some sense, which I shouldn't have really, is learning how you can keep your fingers down when you're changing strings as well. And essentially this last point is how to make your playing as efficient as possible. Try and find a way in which, you know, your fingers have to move as little as possible, not just where do your fingers stay down. If you take it a step further, what is the most efficient way to play this? What is the least amount of finger movement I have to do for this? And also then just resting your fingers on the strings and muting them when you're not playing anything, because it's great for just allowing you to play with less energy. Essentially, you might think, oh well, I want to play with loads of energy, and yes, while you do want to play with energy, I still think you've got to play efficiently, especially if you want to play quickly. And it does come into that with flying fingers. If you want to play quickly and with good tone, you do want to eliminate these issues. And if you know, again, you've got those exercises and you know what pressure you need to keep everything at, and now you're thinking, oh, what's the most efficient way I can play this? What's the least amount of finger movements I need to do to play this stuff? Then you're on the right track to eliminating those flying fingers, and I'm sure they'll go soon. Now in today's video, we're tackling quite a big issue, especially with a lot of beginner bass players, but it can affect intermediate and more advanced bass players, and it's why am I not getting better? What am I doing wrong? And what can I do to actually get better? Well, in the first place, we really do need to pinpoint something. Getting better is entirely subjective. While there's an objective goal of what you want to do to get better, the feeling of getting better is entirely subjective to you. If you really have played a lot of good gigs, perhaps you haven't made a lot of progress, or perhaps you have made a lot of progress, or less than you might have done in the practice room, but you feel like you've made more progress because of those experiences. And ultimately, you feel like you've made progress based on what you've previously done and what you're doing now. And it can feel perhaps a bit annoying when in your past you feel as if you've done something better and now you're doing it worse. But a lot of the case, when you think, oh, what was I doing a month ago? And you think back to it, you're like, no, I have got better since then. And I've got one great tip. If you're really stuck in this place of where you're like, no, I was just so much better back then. As soon as you start playing and start practicing, just record your practice sessions, just the audio, but video as well, and then you can assess technique and things. And if you just record one every month, and then if you ever feel demotivated, go back a month or two and you'll be like, oh wow, no, I've definitely made a lot of progress. Like, watch your most recent one and then watch the one a month before it, and most of the time you'll be able to see, okay, no, I really have made a lot of progress here. It's entirely subjective. It's just how you think of it in your mind, and often when you're burnt out and demotivated, you can get similar feelings. And there's one thing which is great to fix this as well, is rather than perhaps if you've got a teacher and they want you to learn this tune and you're really just not enjoying it, perhaps it's too difficult, you're not liking it, and it's just completely not interesting to you, then go to your teacher and say, hey, I'm not really interested in this, and say a tune that you're interested in learning, and say, hey, just as a compromise, can we still learn this tune, or perhaps pick a different tune that perhaps may interest you, but also alongside it, do something that interests you a lot as well. And often if you're with a teacher, they'll say, no, that's totally fine, and they're very happy to work on things, especially if it's one-to-one with you, that you're really passionate about yourself, as ultimately they're there to teach you music, they're there to make you better players, but they're also there to encourage you and inspire you to do more music. They give you the skills to do this yourself, but if you're perhaps not there yet, or you want to work with something with them and make sure you really get it right, then it's great to take some of your own listenings and give it to them and say, I want to learn this tune. For example, maybe if I was doing grade 6 piano and I was doing loads of classical tunes that I didn't like, and I was like, well, what about if I did a jazz tune, maybe like Cantaloupe Island, Footsteps, Sugar, something like that, something that interests me more. And obviously that comes from me as a jazz context and coming from a jazz musician, but I still think the concept stands that if you're not playing music that you enjoy as a musician, you'll feel burnt out and you feel like that the music that you're playing and producing isn't good enough, and you feel like you're not making progress because you don't enjoy what you're playing, is essentially the main scope of it. But there's also a third category which I think doesn't get talked about enough, and it's when, if you've got this big project coming up and you work your hardest for it and you do that project and you absolutely smash it and do amazingly, then why afterwards do I feel like I'm so awful and I'm so demotivated to practice and I'm just not making any progress because I've had this big thing and now I'm just on this absolute crash? And that is very common, especially if it's like the biggest whatever you've done in your life, the biggest gig, for example. You can often feel very demotivated and very much like, I'm just not making progress, I'm so frustrated with my playing after those events. And if that is you, that often will pass. Give it a month probably, but you can always work it back in by just trying to start something new, trying to start something fresh, turn a new leaf perhaps, and see what you can get from there. As once you apply these techniques and you think, okay, I maybe have had something recently that I've really been working for and I'm feeling demotivated, once you accept it's a totally normal feeling that loads of people experience and you're not the only one alone that feels this way, and accept it, and then make recordings of yourself, and then you can look back through the months and realize you are actually making progress. Musical progress does ebb and flow. It's not always up and it's not always down, but you will see mixtures of the two. So don't feel too bad on yourself if it's gone down, and don't be too hard on yourself. If you just keep working at it, you will get better. The overall trend will still be up. And again, record yourself and take note of what you're doing and really assess your playing, because your greatest critic really is yourself. If you think, oh no, that was perfect, I couldn't have done anything better, then perhaps you're being too kind on yourself. And if you think, oh, everything I play is awful, then you're being too harsh on yourself, and perhaps get someone else to assess it for you to give you a different perspective. But that's all I've got for you today on why you're not making progress. Another great thing just to end on as well is, if you're not practicing consistently, doesn't matter for how long each day, but just practicing for 5 minutes, 10 minutes each day does wonders for your playing and progress improvements. Just one little thing, 5 minutes every day. You could work on a tune over 2 months and spend 5 minutes on it each day and get through it, and often you'll find you'll make way more progress than big lengthy sessions, perhaps less frequently. So get on the bass as much as possible, and at least 5 minutes every single day, and you really will see a progress spike, as well as all this other stuff of why you may feel like you're not making progress even though you are. So I hope this has given you a bit of self-motivation, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.